Hey guys, how's it going? Corey Wakefield here with another V2 element video for you guys. And this one is actually just going to be a very quick addendum to a previous video I made that was an introduction to the idea of partials for our V2 elements, and actually kind of discuss the anchor partial in general as a starting point. So if you haven't watched that video, definitely make sure to watch that first, as it will go over, like I said, that idea of what is a partial. It'll kind of explain some of this verbiage I'll be throwing around in these videos, just so we're all on the same page and you guys kind of know what we're discussing here. So if you've been using Pro in the past and our header and footer builders, you will be familiar with these V2 elements with advanced controls. And with our latest major release of our content builder, we've brought over that same functionality from the header and footer builders into the content builder. So all that same power and flexibility you now have at your disposal for your page layouts as well. So super cool. In doing that, we also shuffled things around just a little bit, found some ways to make things a little more cleaner, found some ways to reuse some bits of code across different elements. And so with that, some of the controls, mostly for the anchor partial, have shifted around just a little bit. It's not huge, but in that video, I kind of run through these different control groupings, and you'll notice that not every one of those is there still. So we wanted to make this quick video just showing you kind of where things have moved to, where you can expect stuff going forward. So if you remember from our anchor partial video, one of the last sections that you saw was called interactions. And if you clicked interactions, it took you all the way to the end here. And there were some controls regarding text interactions on hover, graphic interactions on hover, and then you had the chance to enable or disable your particles for the buttons. Well, a pattern we're kind of moving into, that we're kind of seeing with these partials and we're trying to utilize as much as possible, is to make things more reusable. Sometimes we want to silo them into groups that can easily be included into different elements whenever we can. So for example, some of those graphic interactions, like I said, were lumped in with text interactions, and then they were lumped in with these particle enable controls, and that made it really hard to reuse things as we needed. So one kind of thing we're using, especially in the anchor right now, is you'll see a lot of these setup sections that start, and if I go to text, you'll see the same thing here, that start with these enable controls. So depending on the design you're going for, if you want a button with just a graphic, you can enable that graphic and work with that. If you want just text, you can turn that on and work with that. But things are a little more siloed now within their sections. So the first thing you'll see here, now that I've enabled this text, is that interaction dropdown that was part of that interactions control group previously is now part of the text setup box. So if you have text enabled, you will see this interaction box down here. And that makes it a lot cleaner because, if you had text enabled, what was actually happening was, or text disabled, down the control list, that control was actually showing and hiding depending on that state, which is fine, but you weren't seeing that feedback right away. So now that we have this all grouped together, you will see that this interaction is available right away. So if we don't have an interaction like we have now, hovering over the button will just kind of give us our standard interaction there. If I click back into my button here, go to my text, we'll do like slide left. Now when I hover, I get that slide left animation effect that was part of the interactions down there. Similarly, the graphic interaction has been moved into the graphic setup. So if you have a graphic turned on, you will see this select appear, and right now we have no interaction. And let me change my text just a little bit to the right. Now that I've got my graphic on, I can do the same thing here. I might use a flip, and we can turn that on and off. So again, the interaction from that previous interactions control group is now grouped with the element itself that it's affecting. So it makes it a little cleaner. And why we did that is because the graphic is actually something we realized we could refactor into a partial, and it's now being utilized in the headline. which actually allows you, along with some other controls in that headline element, to recreate some of the old looks of the classic element, the feature box. And we'll go over that in a video as well. But there's a lot more that you can do now that that graphic partial is being included in lots of different elements. And then finally, instead of having two checkboxes in a final box here to enable or disable your particles, you can turn them on right here, and then you'll see all the controls. Nothing changed here at all other than we moved those checkboxes that was in that final box to kind of an enabled toggle in line with the particle itself. And again, what this does is if we choose at some point in the future to reuse these particles in another element, maybe as kind of an always visual decorative thing, then we can easily do that now that they're siloed into a little group that's very self-contained. And so we can turn this secondary one on if we want it as well. You'll see that. And so what you end up kind of getting, like I mentioned earlier, is anything you do or don't want to work with, you can quickly turn on and off, and that entire group is then hidden from view and makes it real easy to kind of get a bird's eye view of what you're working on. And it just hides everything that you don't need and makes it a lot cleaner. Similarly, again, this is the same for any anchor, whether it's a link, a menu item, or a toggle. We'll see the same patterns here. So we've got our text, which we can turn on and off. We've got our interactions right here, which would, we'll do slide from bottom. So now when I hover over these, the menu items get that effect. Same with the graphic. Do flip Y. And then similar to the pattern of how the particles and the graphic and the text work, the sub indicator has this enable button. So again, if we have everything turned off as a starting point, we have a very quick bird's eye view of kind of what are all my main sections, and they more accurately represent what's happening up here. And I can get to things a little bit quicker. So let me just turn that on since we can't see our menu anymore. So that's basically it. Not a huge change, just a quick shuffling of items around. And we just want to make sure that you guys fully understand where those things have moved to and how to get to them. Also, what it does for us in siloing these things out a little bit more is, for example, this graphic that is used in the headline, as I mentioned earlier. Since the headline isn't really an interactive element, it's not something you would maybe hover over or click on like a link here. The headline does not have this interaction. And if the interaction was broken out in a completely separate box like it was before, it just made it really hard to utilize those features conditionally. But now that it's all included in one partial that we can reuse, we can turn interactions on or off as needed. So for a headline where you're not going to really interact with it as much as you do just kind of observe it and read it, this isn't included, and it's just very easy for us to work with and use that across different elements. So nothing too crazy, just wanted to make sure that you all were aware of where you would see those changes. Remember that the anchor partial is used for buttons. Turn my text back on here. Any button, any menu item, so that would be like my top links or my sublinks in a drop down right here, or toggles. So if you're toggling like a modal or an off canvas area, those are all using the anchor partial, and you will see these changes reflected across all of those elements anywhere there is that anchor partial being used. So hopefully that helps clear things up. Thank you guys for watching, and we will be bringing some more videos to you all very soon. See ya.